Welcome, everybody. Tonight's meeting, I think, rather than going by the agenda, we're going to start off with having the DEP wants to do a brief presentation, and then they're opening up to questions and comments from the committee members. So, I don't know who wants to start for the DEP. They're in from Zoom. Can they hear me? I see a nod.
I will hear it.
I can't hear it.
Echoing a bit. But I think you picked it up to us to go ahead, so with that, I don't know if you want to go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Schaff and committee for inviting Mass DEP to participate in this meeting. And I just want to check, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I am Yvette DePisa, Director of the Drinking Water Program for Mass DEP. And what I wanted to do was just quickly introduce the DEP folks that are on this call. And I want to start with Brian Parisi. So Brian is the Assistant Commissioner for Mass DEP Operations. And then I want to go on to Sadi Mutamidi. He is the Deputy Regional Director for the Western Regional Office. Christine Samad is on. Christine Samad is an environmental analyst in our Western Regional Office, and she is responsible for inspections of drinking water facilities and watershed inspections, in particular for the MWRA source. And we also have Deidre Doherty, who is our drinking water section chief for the drinking water program in the Western region. And she's also the municipal services section chief in the Western region. She oversees more than 500 public water systems in the western part of the state. What I wanted to do was to have Dee make some brief remarks, but then to specifically address the 7 items that Mr. Schraff identified for us from the July 13th letter that was on the access plan for the avoidance of filtration waiver for the MWRA system. So I want to turn it over now to Dee Dee so that she can walk through the brief remarks and walk through the 7 items of concern.
Okay, thanks Yvette, and thank you to DCR and specifically the Division of Water Supply Protection and to the Advisory Committee. We know you're both working hard on the improving and the management of the Ware River watershed together in a collaborative process, and this discussion is part of that. So I wanted to give a little bit of background on Mass DEP, our role and responsibilities, and some of the specific interests we have in those particular 7 items. So I'll give you a little background first to help the audience as well as the committee. Mass DEP is a public health and environmental regulatory agency for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we have been granted, the department has been granted primacy by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for implementing the National Safe Drinking Water Act, including the surface water treatment rule requirements that apply to surface waters, and determining if there's an avoidance of filtration waiver is approved or warranted. So essentially we're doing the work of the same kind of work EPA would be doing, but we're doing it for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Primacy means, in that case, also that EPA evaluates Mass DEP on a regular basis to determine if the department can still be a lead on implementing the Safe Drinking Water Act requirements. These are national standards that we're applying to unfiltered systems, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on some of that. Along with the Quabbin Reservoir and the Wachusett Reservoir, the Ware River watershed is a part of the water system that supplies clean drinking water to Massachusetts Water Resource Authority customers, which treats and delivers the water to 3 million people in about 53 Massachusetts communities. 3 of those communities are in western Massachusetts. The MWRA water system is one of only a handful of water supplies in the country that qualify for and receive approval for a waiver from filtration requirements due to exceptional source water quality protection efforts. And to maintain this waiver, DCR and MWRA must continue to meet strict federal and state standards for water quality, including source water, disinfection, and watershed protection. And the role here DCR is playing is in watershed protection. It's MassDEP's responsibility to set the direction for and oversee the watershed protection and control program that is DCR's responsibility. And it's DCR's responsibility itself to implement and enforce it. So currently, MWRA is approved for an unfiltered operation using its Quabbin, Wachusett, and Ware River sources, and our goal is to continue to have that occur in the future, including in the coming decades. In order to maintain that waiver, MWRA has to have a watershed management plan that prevents contamination and reduces the level of contaminants in source water, where it cannot eliminate it, which means needing to look at what are the activities that are happening in those watersheds. So these activities and DCR's management of them are regularly reviewed and updated in long-term plans, like the public access management plan we're looking at tonight. There's also a required, EPA-required annual inspection and review. And this is specifically what Christine Simard is the lead for the Quabbin and Ware watershed, and has been for the last 2 years. These regulations require that there's an annual on-site inspection that results in a report that the DEP sends to DCR, the MWRA, and we have to send it to EPA, and often EPA is participating in our inspections that are conducted on an annual basis. In that report, DEP recommends the best management practices to maintain water quality and that waiver. And that will sometimes include recommendations for activity restrictions in the watershed and for changing them or for changing how DCR manages them. Public water suppliers are required to exercise best management of the land they own or control. This applies to all public water suppliers. And to make the best management efforts to maintain water quality affected by activities on land that is not under their direct control. So these annual inspections and reports generally result in DCR providing quarterly updates to the department in between these annual inspections. So DCR, during the course of the year, periodically reporting to the department these requirements for progress reports in various areas. Now, one of the issues we're concerned about is climate change, and climate change impacts on water quality and water demand needs are concerns across the Commonwealth. The drought and storm impacts are a concern for both US EPA and for DEP. Watershed conditions have changed over the many years since the MWRA was issued a filtration waiver. And in addition, the years between 2010 and 2023 have seen negative impacts from climate change in surface water across the Commonwealth, and that has included sometimes rising temperatures, for example, in those water supplies. So the Commonwealth is taking proactive actions across many agencies, ours included, to take steps towards prevention and mitigation of climate change impacts. So MassDEP is concerned about any and all activities, and specifically our regulations refer to all human activity that can impact the current approval to avoid filtration. So MassDEP has observed the following issues. These are the 7 issues regarding DCR's Watershed Protection Control Program as reflected in their draft public Ware River Public Access Management Plan. So those seven activities. The first one, I'll make clear that Mass DEP supports the idea of a multi-use trail system with clearly identified trails and uses. This is consistent with our regulations, which, I'll give you the citation, 310 CMR 2220A has specific provisions for that management control program, and those include demonstrating control through the management of human activities. And this is important that all of the activities that are allowed, DCR is able to manage with its resources. Mass DEP also supports prohibiting water skiing on Long Pond in the location described under the public access plan. This is consistent with our requirements in our regulations about prohibiting bodily contact with source water, and also with the management and control of adverse impacts that I've already mentioned in our other regulation in 2220A. Mass DEP supports also eliminating the large groups of horses. The existing permits have allowed 50 animals in a group, and we're supportive of limiting that large group and managing a smaller group. And this is consistent with those provisions for managing adverse impacts and the potential for adverse impacts. Mass DEP also supports road access being as restrictive as what is allowed on other DCR properties, such as even other state parks and other watersheds. And this is consistent with, demonstrating control and being able to manage the activities in the area that is under their oversight. And also, the next one, number 5, would be DCR property should only be open during daylight hours. This is consistent with other practices on other properties managed by the Commonwealth, and that's appropriate here to likewise demonstrate control and management of activities, in particular detrimental activities that may occur at night. And finally, almost near the end here, DCR watershed protection and control program for the Ware River watershed should be similar to, comparable to, the program for the Quabbin Reservoir watershed. Ware is an active, unfiltered water supply source, and that designation warrants an improved management and control of activities that could be detrimental. And finally, and this is the key piece here, is that DCR staffing and other resources must meet the demands and the potential threats of public access to water quality. And this is an ongoing concern of both the department and of EPA, that DCR has sufficient staffing and resources to manage the activities that it would consider allowing in the watershed. So this is some of our information. I hope we gave you the background on the DEP's responsibilities and our concern for drinking water now, but also in the future, because this is one of the long-term plans, but it is planning for future use as well as actually current use. And we do also encourage you, the committee members, as well as any people that are attending this meeting, to provide your input into this process, and that could result in an updated Ware River Watershed Public Access Management Plan. And the public comment does, we know, continue through February 28th.
So,
Thank you, Dee Dee. And we are open to further discussion on these items, and I really want to strongly encourage comments on the access plan and getting them into the process for review.
do any of the committee members have questions, comments?
I have a comment. My name is Dennis Grabersky, and I spent a lot of time in the pathology department, over 20 years. I'm currently the managing partner of our vaccine company. I've also run a biotech research lab for about 25 years, about 45 years of collective experience working in infectious diseases, et cetera. My biggest concern is the bibliography that was offered as the draft of the Ware River Watershed Plan. There was one peer-reviewed reference, a paper by Cron et al. That is probably out of date by 15-plus years. But in the plan, you said with the latest information, we've come up with this new idea of why we have to eliminate swimming water activities from Long Pond. I simply don't understand it. One beaver house with 4 beavers in it, 160 pounds, will create defecation from the animals directly into the water source of about 2+ tons a year. And I guarantee you there are hundreds of beaver houses throughout this watershed. And yet somehow the normal flora that humans have in Long Pond, whether they be swimming, water skiing, or even the companion animals, somehow that normal flora is going to be considered pathogenic. It's going to travel through the water column, make its way despite being exposed to UV rays direct from the sun during the summer months when this activity occurs, and somehow this normal flora is going to become pathogenic, even though DCR and Division of Water Supply Protection has enormous track record in preventing Cryptosporidium and Giardia, which are ubiquitous in the animals that are in Quabbin and this watershed. They eliminate it by their techniques, which are UV irradiation, ozone, which is created by the UV, a byproduct of it, as well as sodium hypochlorite, which is simply hyperchlorination. So why then is DEP trying to eliminate human activities from Long Pond when part of the record says it takes 4.5 years for water from this watershed to make its way to the Boston water taps? Why then can't we have human activities in this area? It's simply not enough to say we own it, we control it, you can't use it, because the people here want to hear why. What's the science behind it? I'll stop there.
Hello.
Hi. Unless you want to respond to that, I'd be glad to respond.
No, please do, Dee Dee.
Okay, thanks. So, I'm going to say it's pretty long-standing, and I'm going to say it goes back to just about the time the Ware River Watershed was created, along with Quabbin and Wachusett, that the Department of Public Health's requirements are that no person shall swim, wade, or bathe in any public surface water source, and no person shall, unless permitted by a written permit by the Board of Water Commissioners or like body having jurisdiction of such source, fish in, enter in, or go in any boat, seaplane, or other vehicle, etc. So, or enter upon the ice. So it is not changed probably for close to 100 years that this requirement has been in place, and the department has maintained it, and it applies to all public water supplies, including those that are filtered. This one is not filtered, and I will say that not all of MWRA's water is treated with ozone. I know you have cited that, but it isn't actually the case for the communities in Western Mass receiving water from Quabbin. But it's a long-standing requirement, and it's one that we are seeing that needs to be applied in this case because it's an active water supply source and it's unfiltered, and that is a concern.
Let me interject before you go on. We have several ponds in this area, and we have Devon Pond that empties into Long Pond that empties into Whitehall Pond, and in Devon Pond and Whitehall Pond, you can have swimming activities, boating activities, unrestricted, and yet Long Pond is somehow this anomaly that you're going to prevent something that is otherwise being introduced into these other sources from getting into the water supply in Quabbin, which is 20 miles away. It doesn't make sense.
how to address that except to say that some of the management controls and the parties controlling them and the agreements already in place on some of the other water bodies are not the same as they are where DCR has that. DCR's Division of Water Supply Protection specifically has the ability to do this management action. And for any public water supplier in the Commonwealth, we would likewise expect them, when they have total ownership and total control, to in fact exercise it, to apply this regulation to that body of water that's used for a public water supply. And we're, you know, we can, the other activities, the other ponds are currently addressed so far. They have some limitations, but not the same limitations. That would not be a reason why, in this case, where it is possible, the public water supplier would do, in fact, as little as is possibly done elsewhere. It's appropriate for them to do the best that they can do here.
So
And that's what we would expect of any public water supplier, filtered or unfiltered in the Commonwealth.
But you have Whitehall Pond, which is part of Rutland State Park, which is the third large pond in line after Demon and Long Pond that receives the water. And yet there's unrestricted swimming that occurs there. It doesn't make sense what you're proposing. It's an arbitrary and capricious limitation on a single body of water that is currently used for recreational activity. And the people in this room, all our property values are affected whenever you decide to put additional restrictions on our use of this land.
I think what's also missing in your analysis, I see that you reference the Quabbin Reservoir trying to regulate us similarly. The Ware River is only diverted between late December and early April under certain conditions, not every year. It is not Quabbin Reservoir. It is not the primary source of the drinking water. I think that's part of what you're missing in this whole discussion right now, is that we're not Quabbin Reservoir, we're not Wachusett Reservoir. There have been activities allowed in the Ware River watershed area for decades that you are now trying to eliminate, that people here just don't, you have to have a pretty good rationale for doing it, and we don't see that. Again, you have public swimming beach downstream from Long Pond, and you're eliminating a fraction of the human contact with the water in Long Pond, where you have tons of it in Whitehall Pond. Go ahead.
I'd like to reiterate a point in that regard that comes from the audience, particularly a member of this water skiing community, that the water taken from the Ware River watershed occurs between December and April, as Jeff alluded to. And these activities that take place on Long Pond that we're discussing presently take place from June to Labor Day. Opposite ends of the calendar. So the impact seems to be minimal, if there is any impact. Being 6 months previous or after any outtake of water, and then, as Dennis alluded to, the natural filtration of the tiny impact of human skin in contact with the water. So I just wanted to reiterate that point on behalf of one of the members of the audience.
If I could just show one other inconsistency in the approach here. The current recommendation is to decrease the size of the motors that are in use on Long Pond from water skiing type motors, and I don't own a boat, I don't have a dog in the fight, but I'll tell you, it doesn't make sense to me that you're using an argument where the larger motors create a possible toxin when you can currently allow boats to be used directly in Quabbin. You can go and rent the small motor boats in Quabbin and currently use it. So please, justify to me the dilution that's occurring with, you know, the parts per trillion or gazillion or whatever number you want to use with the larger motors that are used in Long Pond versus the contamination that's coming by allowing boating in Quabbin Reservoir. It doesn't make sense. It's not consistent.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for DEP. Oh, just that? I'm still good. No, it doesn't. This is a different setup. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. All right, anyhow, my name is Cindy Schlenner, and one of the things I'm concerned about is the lack of testing. We have not heard anything in either the draft proposal or conversations here about any testing that has been done by the outtake pipe that would actually cause you to be concerned. If the water quality is good or has gotten better over the years, that why are there restrictions? So have you done any testing to say the water quality has gotten worse and that's why we have to put restrictions? What kind of testing have you done?
Would DEP like to answer that question? As to what testing has been done that causes you concerns about the watershed? And that these activities have to be eliminated or limited?
Okay, the DCR has conducted water quality analysis. They actually have it on page 25 of their plan. It has indicated variations over time, certainly a range. But our analysis, our concern here is in large part about management of and control of activities with the resources that DCR has available to them and within their authority and responsibility to take action under our regulations and also under DCR. But generally we have seen water quality temperatures rising, and we have concerns about severe storm impacts, including erosion, but also drought issues. And so the variations that we expect in our climate and with storms and water quality, which we have seen in other water supplies, we are also concerned about in this particular water supply watershed, without having done all of the analysis that would, for this particular outlet point, to say that it's going to happen here as opposed to that we don't have a reason to believe that it would not.
Okay, so from my understanding then, there has not been analysis done at that outtake pipe for there to be any concern,
Documented concern.
any documented concern. Is that correct?
Is a preventative program. We are very concerned about making sure that we do not have a problem that impacts public health. So, you know, when you're looking at the data, you are looking to make sure that there's no further degradation, but also that there are improvements. And you're keeping in mind that we are seeing in other areas where lack of attention to watersheds have led to systems losing the avoidance of filtration waivers. So we want to be preventative and not reactive to something negative that impacts the water quality for more than 3 million people.
Okay, so this is a preventive measure. The question is, though, I know from horseback riding, I haven't really seen a huge increase. I haven't seen swarms of people coming out here to do activities. It's been the usual folks. So I haven't seen where there's such an increase in population that would warrant a degradation of the area around and the area inside the watershed. So I can understand your concern about it being preventive, but I mean, the ultimate prevention is to just fence off the whole area. And that's not going to happen. So everyone needs to compromise, and you need to understand that we have lived here and have been used to certain recreations that you're now taking away, that now you want to take away from us without warranting that.
Let me frame the science in a very easy way for you to answer it. What kind of endotoxin levels are you seeing after the disinfection process when you take sampling coming from the Quabbin system? Are you monitoring the endotoxins periodically? I assume you do almost on a daily basis. Are you seeing spikes in endotoxins associated with when the Ware River dumps into the system? What kind of data do you have? That's what I want to see. What's the data to defend what you're trying to do?
We're looking for data, and some of our concepts and approach to this is much more about being preventive and protective and planning ahead. We, in the Western region, have specifically dealt with quabbin and algae growth on a number of different years. In one case, so bad that disinfection was increased so much. In this case, we have chlorine and UV serving the 3 communities in my region. It was so bad that the chlorine was growing so much, and it was growing not at the surface where it was accessible, but below the surface at a depth where they could not treat it. So all they could do was add more chlorine because the algae was taking that up. And what that did was the algae were dying off, and and it led to all of the water tasting metallic, which led to people being concerned that they were giving metallic tasting water to their children, and was that safe? So some of the data isn't there for your specific questions that you're asking about to say, is this for sure already causing a problem? And we are, in fact, in the preventive business, and this is a long-term plan to move forward with that. But I would also say that the activities have been allowed by DCR, the commissioner of DCR, and they have changed over time. And some new activities are being allowed since the watershed protection plans and the public access plans have gone into place, and some have been adjusted and are restricted. And DCR has thoughtfully thought about how it can manage what activities it is allowing in this watershed. So they have gone to the multi-use trails, they've gone to certain designated trails for horses, they have moved to a management approach that is appropriate. And it is the land that is purchased by and maintained by the MWRA customers. They pay for this land for water supply protection, not for these other uses. But they allow these other uses, and that's specifically mentioned in the statutes. I recognize that, and I can see it's very specifically included in the advisory committee makeup, but because recreational activities would be allowed. And they are there to be allowed and managed to the extent that the DCR's, Division of Water Supply Protection, and the department concurrently believe that they can manage and address. And our conclusions about that are to be more restrictive, and to do so for the generations to come, and not simply for the current people using this watershed. And I understand from the surveys of the people that bothered to do the survey about the watershed, the Ware River watershed specifically, that about a third, a little bit more, of them are not ones from the towns that have been affected by the existence of this water supply within your towns. And I know that that's a significant impact. More familiar with it from the communities affected by the Quabbin, but I recognize it as an impact here nevertheless, as well.
From my,
About a third of the users are not from the communities affected by this. And watershed being within their town boundaries or across their town boundaries. And those users are also present, and they are a factor here, as well as the other 2/3, which really are probably more heavily used by people amongst the towns where the watershed resides. I recognize that, but a third of them are not, and I wanted to point that out. But I do see that our perspectives are different here. I'm not sure we'll find the common ground here on that, but ours is about protection, it's about prevention, it's more about planning, and in our case, we're anticipating that Ware River may be more valuable and used differently in the future.
But at that point in time, oh, sorry.
I think what you're really doing is you're just trying to develop some appeasement for the EPA, and you're willing to sacrifice Long Pond's use here to do that. And I don't think that's correct, because there's no scientific basis that I've heard here tonight that would justify doing that. There's absolutely nothing that you're doing that would, eliminating water skiing and swimming activities from Long Pond would do nothing to help the long-term watershed plan of the Ware River. I don't see it.
You had something.
Following up on it a little bit more, the Water Supply Protection Division owns the body of water called Demon Pond, and they own Whitehall Pond. And as said before, both of those are used by the public. Demon Pond is completely surrounded by cottages, some of which go back to when they were camps and had an empty steel drum for a cesspool. The outflow from Demon Pond is barely visible through the woods, and from Whitehall Pond, which is taking the outflow from Long Pond as a public bathing pond, Ware River goes down through a series of marshes, swamps, woodlands, beaver ponds, muddy pond. So by the time it opens out into the Ware River near the Ware River diversion, it's gone through a whole series of natural filtration plus whatever is picked up from wildlife in the woods.
Appreciate that comment, and I want to strongly remind you to include your comments in the public hearing process. We will evaluate all of the information that we get, and working not only within the state but also with the EPA as we look at the avoidance of filtration waiver, we will make the best decisions that we can.
I do have another question, and it involves the horses. You have now suggested that DCR limit groups up to 25 horses. So no more can a group ask DCR for a permit to have an organized ride of greater than 25 horses. Now, most of the trails, horse trails, are set away from Ware River. So why then the limiting organized rides to less than 25 horses? We have a group that has been in existence for several decades, and they have applied for special permits from DCR to have their organized trail rides maybe 3-4 times a year, and that's it. So why limit the organized horse trail rides to 25, an absolute number, when just 4 times a year they could have a special permit granted to them to have an organized trail ride on trails set far away, well, maybe not far, but set a good distance from the Ware River.
Are you meaning a good distance from the Ware River, the intake place?
Both the Ware River and the intake.
Yeah, if I could speak to that also, we're talking about Barry Riding and Driving Club here. We've been using the Watershed for 84 years, and it's our proposal that we allow the regional director to evaluate trail ride proposals that go above 25, and if it meets DCR's requirements at that time, that a special permit be allowed at the discretion of the regional director. And I think that would be a compromise that would allow us to meet your needs as situations change, and also meet our needs to be able to use the watershed in a productive way.
I'm anticipating that you'll provide that comment.
Yes, we have provided that comment, right.
The department does recognize that the DCR has, in addition to addressing the concern of the departments and on the large numbers, the 50 or more that might be in the permitted group before, that it has changed its designation of the trails for use for horses, with an eye towards improving the crossings, the stream crossings, and other places which presented a greater risk.
So does that mean that we could get a special permit?
It means that we're expecting you to provide that public comment.
Okay, we have,
The rationale for that.
right, we've done that, so.
But, yeah, well, it's still open till Tuesday.
Very good. Very good.
I'd like to speak about vehicle access, if we could. We've met, some of us on this panel have met with DCR to request consideration of additional roads being open. And from the season designated as the end of mud season till October 1st, basically regular access for people that are less athletic than horseback riders and mountain bikers and hikers to have access to some of these roads that were originally town roads for 200 plus years and have been in use in the watershed since the watershed's inception. And I was wondering why it's so important to limit vehicle access throughout the watershed on these well-established, well-maintained graveled roads. And you made a comment that this watershed should be managed as the other districts, when in fact in the other districts, like around Wachusett, there's state highways, there's local roads in each community around the reservoir, and the same with the Quabbin. So, and these are collected waters as a reservoir. This is a watershed. We're not asking, to be able to splash through the river and the wetlands and stuff, but we're asking to retain vehicle access on the hard, well-maintained roads that cross culverts when they are in close proximity to the river, and why it is so detrimental or purported to be detrimental to the reservoir, to the watershed.
Understanding is that the road access is, the concerns with that, I do think that DCR needs to restrict the road access to something that is far more manageable and that helps limit the illegal dumping, vandalism and some of the safety hazards and issues that have occurred there. And again, that goes back in part to what can DCR manage and what security it can provide and what access and controls it can exercise with reasonable safety. There are restrictions, as other DCR properties, other public properties, I should say, more broadly in the Commonwealth. And so that is more restricted is, it seems reasonable. I expect you to put your comment through. If the DCR has to manage some of these, the roads are a greater access for these illegal activities and more dangerous activities and some security issues with that. So if you put the comment in, I understand you will have that. I understand DCR has already made its case as well in terms of that documenting that there have been issues in the watershed and they're trying to make it a much more manageable and controlled area to reduce that. I realize that that will affect people that might have crossed those roads who would have no intention of doing anything illegal and would maintain their vehicle well and would not get stuck in a wetland. But it is how an entity, any entity really, but including DCR's Division of Water Supply Protection needs to do it to manage it effectively and reliably.
So this, what is proposed in this access plan is closing all the gates because they can't police it properly. But your management plan directs them to have adequate staff to maintain this watershed. It's my understanding that within the watershed, there are 3 watershed rangers in this entire property. They don't have the ability to arrest anybody. They don't have the ability to write tickets. They don't have any enforcement capabilities. So we've suggested over and over that perhaps DCR ought to partner with the communities in the watershed area, Hubbardston, Oakham, Barry, Rutland, and financially assist in financial support of their police departments and ask them to help patrol the area and arrest and prosecute problem people and not just ban legitimate users. Does that make any sense, any more sense than just locking all the gates? And also, I'd like to say, if I could, when you lock gates, it just locks people like us out. The problem people go right around the gates and go deeper and deeper into the watershed and cause more and more trouble, out of sight.
Well, it's my understanding that access through the gates and through those control points are like really appropriate for security for any watershed. I understand the issue with the policing, and I think initially there are different practices, but that's been clarified. So I do understand that there's some challenges for the rangers in terms of actually gaining enforcement of activities. And so clearly across all of the activities we just discussed, it's more challenging for the rangers to enforce them. So the more activities, the more challenging it is for them to enforce them as it currently stands. So I understand your suggestion, and there are different watersheds we deal with in the Western region, unfiltered watersheds that use environmental police and use the city police when they have a good relationship with them for contract for services for policing the watershed. DCR has some specific requirements about contracting and delegating certain services versus having its own staff do some of those. I don't know all the details of those, but that may be a factor here. And to the extent that for your suggestion to be implemented, it may require more statutory changes or other changes to allow that to occur.
You're saying that DCR is a unique situation and they cannot partner with local police departments?
I didn't say partner, I said contract. Because I am expecting the police would be paid. Am I correct? You asked them to pay for police services.
Well, I
So
would
if
think
you're
if you
asking,
asked for
if
regular
you're saying
patrols.
instead, if you're saying, for example, instead that the pilot payments, and I'm getting, I don't wanna, I'm getting a bit off of DEP's territory here, but the pilot payments, and I've lived in a community where more than half of the town has been owned by the state or some nonprofits. So pilot payments in lieu of taxes, are they applied to, say, policing that would then turn around and police the watershed? Or are they applied to some other purpose? I understand that they might be applied to another purpose, but I don't know all of the details for DCR and the policing arrangements that they can do. I think it may fall under this contract kind of provision, which requires that their staff do certain activities and that they do not contract certain things out. But I don't know exactly how that applies here, so I'm afraid I'm not the best person to sort of answer that.
But one of the caveats of your plan, or suggestions, is that they manage the watershed with adequate staff. So if their staff is unable to police properly, or prosecute, arrest, and follow up with prosecution, then it seems they would need some assistance with that.
That's a strategy for sure. The other would be have fewer activities to have to manage. And I think DCR is trying to find that sweet spot where they can have these activities that are more manageable, and if they occur a bit more often, they're still workable and they're not as likely to create some damage, and therefore they're honing in on some activities that are a little bit easier to manage and ban or restrict in some way. And that I think that they are trying to manage that as best they can. But their payments are not open-ended, but they are paid with and by the people that drink the water that comes from these watersheds, where Quabbin and Wachusett, they're paid by the ratepayers of the people that drink the water. And so there is a budget for that. They have to go through a process for that. And that has to anticipate what their needs are going to be.
Well, before the watershed was established, all that property was privately owned, and it was all on the tax rolls in all these towns. So it only seems fair that after the state took the land from the towns, that they would contribute to the towns to offset the loss of taxes.
Good point.
Yes, that I think is the purpose of pilot payments. I realize they're not always considered, the formula is not always considered appropriate by the communities. That was the case in my community. So I recognize that.
I encourage you to put these ideas into your comments.
We've met with
Because
DCR.
we're getting into areas where DEP is not that familiar with these procedures, and we can take a look at what comes out of the process.
So I'm taking it that what DCR presented to you could be compromised on, and DEP could see their way to approve changes made to what DCR presented to you back in July? Or are they more or less stuck with the plan that they presented to you back then?
Well, it is my understanding we're having a public comment process for a purpose of gaining additional information and perspectives. And for that, that's what we would expect DCR to take that information in, bring forward, proposals for any changes that they would make. I suppose in either direction, we would want to see, as DEP, we'd want to see seriously what they would be changing. But that's why it's a draft plan, and that's why it's going to public comment. I, generally speaking, would not anticipate major changes at this point after all of the effort that has been put in. But it is possible that there would be some adjustments to the approaches here. But that's why it's a public comment period. The department has not been reviewing all of the input that DCR directly gets, but we're getting some direct input now. But we gave DCR our very direct input from our experience and our concerns.
Which of these points is there no compromise on? Water skiing, for instance, is that something that you would not be able to compromise on?
We are going through the process of the public hearing. Your comments will be reviewed by DCR, and they will make a proposal back to us. And as Dee Dee says, there can be tweaking up or down. We don't know. It will depend on what information they have and what the decisions they make. And once we get that document, we in Mass DEP and also with EPA have to look at whether there are any impacts to the avoidance of filtration waiver. So we are in the process. So all of your comments have value, and I encourage you to get them into that process.
Okay. Are there any more comments from the committee?
What about nighttime legal hunting?
What about night use? Is that something that we could consider?
For decades, and myself included, for 60 years, hunted raccoon and possum, which is only being done at night. If this is going to be limited to daylight hours, what's going to be done to help them out?
Well, I'm sure you're including that in your comments, right?
Come on. I want to thank you for, I think we've hit a point.
Thank you for nothing.
Where I think the next step is for DCR to make changes to the plan and to present it again to DEP. Is that correct?
The public hearing process will go forward. DCR will get that information. They will evaluate it. Whatever documentation you provide to support your points, they will look at that, review it. They will come back with a revised plan or a plan that we will then review.
Okay.
And we will continue to do all of the requirements, the annual on-site inspection and the follow-up to make sure that this drinking water, unfiltered drinking water source can continue to remain in avoidance of filtration waiver, because that is the drinking water, the Mass DEP drinking water portion of this, is making sure that this unfiltered surface water source is being managed in a way that we can continue to approve the avoidance of filtration waiver.
I do have one minor question, and that has to do with climate change. We've already seen, due to warming temperatures, that you have algae blooms, etc. So my guess is that eventually you will have to put in a filtering station because of all these algae blooms. So it sounds like you're just trying to push off the inevitable.
Well, the algae blooms are related to activity in the watershed and we are hoping that with all of the work that's being done, that, we wouldn't have to give up the avoidance of filtration waiver. But again, all of these things work together to give us the final answer. And it's a continuous review. It's not a one and done. And that's why you are seeing a progression in asking for more controls, better management, is that, you know, what was done 20 years ago is probably not good enough for today, and how will it work for the future? So we want to continue to have the discussion, to collect the information, to continue to do the inspections, and to just continuously improve.
Okay. Any more questions from the committee? Okay.
I have a question.
You have one more.
The,
No.
I have a question.
We're not taking questions from the audience tonight.
Why not?
Because this is for the committee to be asking our questions. We're trying to make a decision on whether or not we're going to recommend approval of the public access plan. So right now, we're trying to get the committee members focused on the public access plan and trying to get our questions answered. If I open it up to the audience, guess what? We will be here until like 10, 11 o'clock at night. I am not doing that
You're not
tonight.
covering the whole scope, though.
What, excuse me?
You're not covering the whole scope. There's some pertinent questions that need to be answered. One of them is about the beaver situation that started with the traffic 26 years ago.
That is
That's a-
something we have no control over, sir. This is about a public access plan, period.
It's about a water filtration situation.
It's about, our concern is a public access plan,
You're doing the same
period.
thing. You're doing the same thing she is on the screen. You're evading the
Wait,
question.
we can't change state laws to make beavers trappable again. What we're trying to do is decide whether or not the public access plan is something we can approve or change. We're trying to get some changes to it. Talking about beavers is not gonna get us there.
It's going to show you, it's going to educate everyone how it got to that point.
No, it won't.
Why not?
It will not bring us to where we need to be to bring this committee into whether or not we recommend approval of the public access plan. We're just concerned with the public access plan. That is something that maybe you should talk to your state legislators about or get involved in some other way. I'm sorry, sir. I don't mean to cut you off, but that's not our purview right now.
Will it ever be? In regards to the water? Don't roll
I've
ahead.
already mentioned Giardia, which is beaver fever.
Right, but they
Cryptus
didn't answer your questions.
Yeah, well,
He's correct, it's not the purview to do that, but, you know, the two waterborne pathogens, the biggest ones are Cryptosporidium from the geese and other things, ruminant animals, and Giardia, beaver fever. I mean, we know that on the committee, we're well aware of it, and you've heard me make
Yes,
comments
but
on it
I'm just
tonight.
looking for some basic acknowledgement on their part, that's all. And everybody, you were frustrated.
I'm looking for basic acknowledgement on my question, because it's gonna be a long way.
we're not getting that, sir.
Okay, all right, today.
It's frustrating, yes, but we're not getting that tonight.
All right.
Okay? No, again, I'm trying to keep this just to the committee members. I see you back there, sir. You wanted to make a comment. I'll let you make a comment, but that's gotta be it.
It's on the access plan, and, you know, this
Okay.
is specifically about, I guess Long Pond has been the one mainly spoken about here, in the Ware River watershed. But, you know, it was also mentioned Demon Pond and Whitehall, and are those gonna be next? You know, where to from here?
Yeah.
And you know, is this gonna be the next Dana, Prescott, Enfield, happening right here in Rutland?
I think that this committee certainly is well aware that this could be a slippery slope.
Thank you.
Very much so. Myself, and I'm sure all the rest of the committee members, that's why we're here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay? Mike?
I want to ask about the DEP's suggestion, the last one of DCR staff be adequate. Have you, what aspect of their personnel do you consider, I'm assuming you consider part of it inadequate, with the patrolling and policing and on foot or in vehicle policing of the watershed? Are you looking to increase that personnel, or directing them to increase that personnel?
Oh, that's a question for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it's just one of the pieces that we look at, and it's one of the progress reports that are required at DCR. They had some staff turnover, some loss, but we have specifically talked with them, and they have already increased staffing in the Ware River watershed, and also the kinds of activities they've, in part because with our conversations with them, the signage, other things have changed in the management of the Ware River watershed, excuse me. It has to be commensurate with the amount of activities and the type that they're trying to control and manage, so that they can reduce and or eliminate some threats. That includes those illegal activities that we talked about, and then the other ones that we that can include introduction of invasive species, the boats not being cleaned properly before being put in the water bodies, managing the size of the boats for the power boats and the larger motors and the potential erosion, so that they are able to evaluate it as well as sometimes manage it in the case of the rangers being in the management group.
So instead of increasing the ranger workforce, the solution apparently is to lock up the watershed so there's less activity to police.
That isn't what I said, sir, so I respectfully said it's not what I said. They have in fact already increased staff, and I think they are improving with that, but I think that they have to be in sync, and that is really the point that we're talking about, is that they have to have resources to deal with their demands. Frankly, that's what I'm saying.
I think it's two different perspectives.
It is perhaps a different perspective, but quite literally, I did not say that. They need to be in balance.
There is
So,
one
are
other,
there additional questions for us?
yes, there's one other thing. We have something called the American Disability Act, and there's a lot of older people who don't have access to fishing, hunting, or activities there. And so by closing these gates, the ADA plan, which is another federal law, I think it might even trump EPA, is being violated in essence, because you're stopping people who cannot have normal activity to walk in, fish, and enjoy the watershed versus people who are able to do that. So I think you have another problem here that you're going to soon face if you go forward with restricting this.
And before you comment on that, I'd like to just add to that, that there's historic sites in the watershed that are being locked away. Some of them are, one in particular is owned by the town of Barry, and the proposal of locked gates would eliminate reasonable pedestrian access to these sites. So I agree with Dennis, and these points have been made, just so that DEP is clear. We've met with DCR and Dan Clark and John Scannell to suggest modification to the road access on behalf of people with less mobility than others, aging population, access to historic sites, and we presented it to them. So I hope that you folks are aware of that communication with them, direct communication. We did meet with them and we discussed it. I hope they heard us.
And we will be sure to follow up on everything we've heard tonight and whatever you have put into the public hearing process. And feel free to contact me or Dee Dee or any one of the DEP folks that are on here with any other questions or concerns, so that we will be sure to evaluate those as part of whatever proposal is made to us that comes out of this public hearing process and all of your comments.
Any more questions from the committee? Thank you very much. We'll continue our meeting. You're welcome to stay or stay on.
We just want to thank you for this opportunity to participate in your meeting and to hear your concerns, and also to let you know that we are listening and we will be following up as we see what comes out of the public hearing process. And I want to reiterate, feel free to contact me at any time to let me know if you have any additional ideas that you want to share. Okay. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you, DEP folks and DCR folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee and staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a blessed evening.
All right. I'm going to move on to the continued discussion. I am going to make it clear on my part that I will not recommend approval of a plan that closes off some of the roads that we have already talked to DCR about, that being Brigham Road, the Prison Camp Road to Brigham Road, and Reuben Walker Road, and Gilbert Road. I cannot see recommending approval of a plan without those roads being left open, except for during the winter and the mud season. Having said that, that comes from a fisherman's perspective. I represent Trout Unlimited. Those are roads that are used frequently for fishermen to gain access to areas that are stocked. I can't see approving this without those roads remaining open. Secondly, I don't see a reason, now having listened to DEP and everything, to prohibit, oh, here, I'll sign it later, to prohibit water skiing on Long Pond. I don't see a reason for it. As far as I'm concerned, swimming is allowed downstream at a state park open to the public, and they're preventing people from getting in contact with the water at Long Pond. That doesn't make logical sense to anybody.
Also, ice fishing on that pond in the winter.
Ice fish, yeah, well, we got ice fishing on that pond in the winter.
When there's ice.
When there's ice. There hasn't been much this year. I saw some people out there 2 weeks ago. I wouldn't have gone out there. Anyway.
When they take the water too.
Yeah. I think, again, I try to make this point is this is not Quabbin Reservoir. This isn't Wachusett Reservoir. This is the Ware River. We're well outside of any of the intakes. I mean, years away from any of the intakes. Traditionally, all these activities have been allowed. The water quality has not been affected by any of them as of this point. Large horse, what's that?
The horse groups, the organized.
The horse groups, I'll leave that to the horse people to decide. I'm not even a water skier, and I can understand the unfairness behind it. They're taking away something that has been allowed for no reason, without a real justification. Okay? And I'm not a water, don't clap me. Rusty knows I am not a water skier. I'm a canoeist. I don't like you guys sometimes. So, come on, let's get that straight too. I addressed the road access, nighttime hours. I can see that you could have a permit system that would allow hunting during the evening hours, during the night. And I think that would be, I think you could work things out, Dan. I think some sort of permit system could be worked out where night access was available to hunters. And I would hope nobody be strictly enforcing somebody trying to get to their deer stand at 3 o'clock in the morning so that they can be there by sunup.
Can I speak to that?
Okay.
Last time we met here, 2 weeks ago, it was brought up about nighttime access in regards to hunting. There was a discussion about it, and I made the comment that we were arguing the vehicle access portion of the access. And I assumed, Ron that we would be able to fine tune some of the details for the vehicle access, even after the plan may have been implemented during the 10-year term. Dan Clark told me that was not. Although we found out that the Trails Committee does have that opportunity to fine tune their access. So in the interim time between that meeting and this, I reached out for a meeting with John Scannell, Dan Clark, and John Scannell preferred to just have me present the points by email. So I did. And the points were made that, maybe fine tune it to allow, to include the hunting season in September, and when people were in lawful pursuit of game, where it's legal to hunt at night, they would be allowed access. Again, John Scannell and Dan Clark gave me no indication whether they would consider any modification or not, but they acknowledged hearing from me.
Okay. And I'd like serious consideration. I don't think any of these requests are onerous. I don't think they affect the water supply at all. I just want to make that clear that there are certain points that I cannot recommend an approval. I will be a no vote. I speak for myself. The rest of the committee,
I think the vehicle access is a huge.
that's a huge issue.
I've never been so disappointed in what I thought was going to be a scientific presentation than what I saw. I mean,
That's what bothered me, that they're doing this for prevention. Well, basically, we could say, if people stop driving cars, that will help a lot, for climate change. But that's not going to happen. I mean,
I would like there to be, to add to the plan, because I never knew about distance swimming before. I think Long Pond would be an ideal place to do distance swimming. And I think that should be added to the Rutland Pond.
sorry, Dan.
Gets a button. Yeah, I really think Long Pond would be another place for the distance swimmers. I firmly believe that. There's no scientific reason.
No scientific reason.
Right.
There might be a user conflict.
Yeah, that's the thing, common pond is basically, you don't have the use.
All right.
God only knows.
Any other?
Someone had to be a question. I'm going to read it out first. What happens when Mass DEP conflicts with DCR, EMRs, and they conflict with the access plan? Our committee conflicts with it. How can we resolve it? I guess that's a real good question.
Well, we have the power of getting in touch with our legislators and the power of whether or not we recommended the approval. I would think that would make a little bit of a difference.
And they're here tonight, they may want to say something.
Would any of our legislators want to say something? Are you prepared to say anything?
Well, no, That's fine. I was expecting a little bit more tonight too. I was a little disappointed. I thought it was gonna be, you know, the questions Dennis asked were spot on. And I think what was kind of interesting too, you know, they keep talking about MWRA. The conversations I've had with Director Lasky, the water is pristine. We haven't heard, has MWRA said it's a problem?
No.
No. And I mean, if that was a problem, I think we would have heard that. And that has not been said any time through this. So, and this whole deal of DEP, you know, I wrote it down because she must have said it 25 times. The agency controls, that's DCR, is the agency that controls. And they're concerned that they have to be able to demonstrate their control in their management. If they need more people, then they need more people. You know, we fought for years to make sure, because as you know, the part of the MWRA money goes to, they pay for people, and it took forever for DCR to hire people that the MWRA was willing to pay for. We fought, and Dan knows that that's true. We fought forever for that, to finally get some bodies out there. If we need more, we'll fight for more bodies. And anyways, I thought a few red herrings tonight with things, right? So absolutely against the plan as presented. I have to finish. I was hoping to get a little bit more tonight too, because I'm still working on my, and just remember folks, if you haven't got in these comments, you have till the 28th. Get those in. Everybody needs to get those in. We still don't have a director. There's no commissioner for DCR. There's no new commissioner for DEP. So there aren't even people there yet. So anyway, you know you have my backing. What the board decides to do, you know you have my full backing with this. And I mean, it's no secret. I'm not.
The best was every time Dennis asked a question, they just went with, we're taking public comment, because they couldn't answer it, come up with an answer, so. Same as Ann. I mean, this is just, and she said it wasn't named Dee Dee a million times. This is all about control. And she used the word control like 15 times, and it's funny how all the people that actually pollute the state and the waters that live out east come out here to tell us, the people who watch over the water and take care of the, you know, and are conservationists, tell us how to do it. It's just, it's horrible. So I know we're with you. I know Kim's with you. She had to leave. And please, like Ann said, please get your comments in before Tuesday, and we'll do our best, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you, Don.
Water quality goes down within 10 years. Will the news be tightened by DEP?
Of course.
Yes.
Now, but if they do water quality control and there's no change, they should agree to loosen the noose so we have more access. But I'm just saying, if they're gonna tighten it, they should be able to say, hey, 10 years. We should, I know, but it should be fair to do that we should have more access if water quality is still, you're trying to fix something that's not broken. And I think that's what's frustrating just about everybody in the room.
I think the slippery slope analogy.
And, you know, I understand, again, one of them said it's all about the perspective. Their perspective is different. Their job is to prevent things from happening. I can understand that. I really can understand that. But what is changing here in some cases is rather onerous. They are big changes. And to make big changes for something that could possibly someday maybe possibly happen a little bit is a little much for at least me to swallow.
Hey, Jeff, what about our proposal that we made last meeting on putting this all aside until they come up with new directors?
That still stands. I mean...
So how do we act on that?
Should we do a motion?
We already did the motion on that.
Yeah, that motion was already voted on.
But what about a motion on the draft proposal itself that currently we do not approve the draft proposal
as it stands?
Yeah.
Are you making that motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion.
I'll
that
second it.
The Ware River Watershed Advisory
Let her make it
Committee, I haven't even made it yet. That so my motion, is that the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee does not approve the current draft proposal, DCR draft proposal, as it stands.
Oh, DEP, yeah.
Well, it's DCR's draft proposal.
Yeah, it isn't DEP's draft
Yeah,
proposal.
they make recommendations for that, so it's, sorry, Dan.
Hey, you're smiling
That's
at
why
least.
I
I
know.
never see you smile, Dan. Come on.
He does when he leaves this room. Oh, thank God, another one off.
And you seconded it, correct?
seconded it, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? The
Very simple.
Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee does not approve the public access plan as
The
it is
draft.
current, the draft public access plan as currently written. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously.
Can I present these petitions and such to DCR?
DCR? Oh, certainly can.
So because the public input period is winding down, and there's concerns about the portal at the website, and people being able to type in comments, and then it's sent, and there's no receipt,
Confirmation.
acknowledgement of receipt. With myself and Lucy Allen and sportsmen's clubs, Worcester County League, people on this panel here have acquired all these letters of opposition to the plan. So there's a letter from each town, Barry, Hubbardston, Oakham, Rutland's Board of Selectmen. There's a letter here from the Rutland Historical Commission, all in opposition. There's 11 clubs signed letters, 11 sportsmen's clubs signed letters of opposition. Those clubs, the ones that made notes of their members, represent almost 3,000 members. 4 clubs did not note the membership, but I'm sure it's several more hundred. Worcester County League is here, has been with us all along. They have sent a letter of opposition. We've got 21 pages, 21 signed letters of opposition by individuals, and we have 38 pages of signed petitions with 353 signatures on them. These signatures total 3,350 signatures. Worcester County League represents the sportsmen's clubs in Worcester County
And Middlesex.
with a total membership of 30,000 members. Plus, we've heard from our legislators, Senator Goby, Representative Berthium, Representative Ferguson, all in opposition. The historical commissions and historical societies of these communities are in opposition. And another item I'll get into in a minute if I could, but I'd like to put into the record that these paper copies are being handed off to DCR tonight, so that there's no confusion as to whether they got them or not.
Okay.
As I ran to the restroom, I got handed a bunch of notes. Don't go unless you really have to. It was pointed out to me that the one of the largest polluters of the water supply is actually DPW with their salt sitting right next door to the watershed.
Yeah,
You
true.
know,
It's true.
A long list of other things that are there, but I think that's worth mentioning, and thanks for bringing that to my attention. Next person, go to the restroom, they're waiting for you.
No, thanks.
Lucy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to show you there are additional petitions and letters in that batch.
Okay.
And we have, as Mike mentioned, letters from the select boards of
Yes.
all the towns of the watershed, which total well over 20,000 in population. And we have letters from Library Association, from educators, people from all walks of life. It isn't just sportsmen or athletes or equestrians or swimmers. It's educators, it's young parents, it's military veterans who gave the most agile years of their lives to military service and now need to get motor vehicles access to the watershed. So I hope you'll consider those. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dan, at the next meeting, I have something for you. I'm gonna give you a great bottle of bourbon. Serve it.
Only one?
It'll be a nice bottle of Angel's Envy or Blanton.
In all of these meetings, I don't think we've seen anybody approach with a letter in favor of this plan.
Wait, I think Division of Water Supply does a great job. They keep all the Giardia, Cryptosporidium from going through and making a mess of the water supply for Boston. I think they do a fantastic job disinfecting whatever comes in from the wildlife and other vectors in the area. But they don't have to change anything. It's just a fantastic job that they're doing. I think that's for the record. They really do a great job.
I said this at our last meeting, I'll say it again. They are just doing the job. We can't sit there and vilify the people.
Right.
They're doing what they're paid to do.
I understand.
And what we're volunteering to do is to voice concerns from our public. And that's all we're doing right now.
I really think the patience of this man deserves a round of applause.
I've got one more thing.
One more thing. Hey, you're becoming the next Dick Williams.
We have weekly meetings with Worcester County League of Sportsmen, and we're fortunate enough to have the Central District Director, Mass Fish and Wildlife Central District Director, Todd Olenek, come and tell us what the district is up to. And then he submits himself to a question and answer session. So it was brought up this past month about the watershed, the impact on fish stocking if these gates are locked up. The gates would be a barrier to Mass Wildlife's ability to stock, and obviously be a barrier to the fishing public. So he was asked, and what does he suspect will happen to that relationship and fish stocking program? And he said he's flat out, without hesitation, he suspected it would end. So the point of this, and I asked him, before I quoted him, he said it would be all right to do so because he said he wasn't telling me or us anything he wouldn't tell DCR. But my point of this is, if the impact of this restrictedness of this access plan is like ballooning out and out and out and out, beyond the public, beyond the portion of the public that's handicapped or less mobile or elderly or with young people, young children in tow, to impact more and more and more of the population. It's just amazing, the impact of this drastic change in access.
Just a point of correction, closing the gates wouldn't prohibit their access. They have a key. Whether they decide to stock or not, that's their decision, but it's not because they don't have access.
They would be given keys. Apparently they don't need keys presently.
They have a key.
A key. Then all the gates aren't the same, correct?
Yeah, except for the Army Corps, but I don't control those gates.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you what he told us.
Okay.
See now, Dan, with enough money, the ideal solution is to put key cards at the gate. And every registered person gets a key card so that you can figure out who has entered and exited at what time. And only registered people could go in.
Good luck with that.
All right.
I know.
One item on the agenda that I skipped over was the approval for the minutes
Oh, right.
of February 9th,
Yeah.
about 2 weeks ago.
Motion to accept as presented.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, carries unanimously.
Well, next meeting.
Next
Yes.
meeting. Everybody pull out your cell phones, get your calendars
Yep.
up here.
All right. Well, the question I have is, what's next as far as DCR is concerned?
That is a good question. The public comment period is ending, correct? As of Tuesday.
Yeah. When,
Do we have any idea of when you might be able to present us with a new draft?
I don't have a specific date, so in general, what the process looks like is we compile and then we have to go through all these comments.
okay.
So.
Would 2 months be enough?
Would 2 months be enough to go through the comments?
Yeah, well, would 2 months be enough to have a closer to final draft? Something that we could,
Yeah, I would think 2 months would give us time to go through the comments, digest them, and decide, you know, what changes, if any, are gonna be made to the plan.
is 1 month too soon?
Well,
Come on, try to figure it out.
I mean, we can certainly touch base after a month and see how things are going.
How about the Ides of March?
That would have been my mother's birthday too. Do we want to do the 15th?
I think that's, I don't think that's gonna.
I don't think that's enough time for them to do that.
I was just kidding.
Oh, I thought you were being serious.
No, because they
okay.
killed Julius Caesar on that day.
Yes.
Dan would like to come
It's
out.
I'm on vacation that week.
Oh, okay.
Well,
How about,
what if we do sort of
It's
the
a
end of
Wednesday.
April? Towards the end of April. That way poor Dan doesn't have an excuse.
Income tax.
20th? How does the 20th of April look for everybody?
That looks great.
I would be.
It's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Next meeting, 20th of April. We'll see if we can hold it here. Okay. 20. Brett, can you see if we can have this room then, please? I thank you, really. It's a big help.
Dick in Florida.
I don't know where Dick is.
Dick Williams, he had 2 other meetings tonight.
Oh, that's right, you did say something. That's right.
So I just wanted to put a few things out there. I wanted to, first of all, recognize that, I wanted to thank the DCR really for a public process that granted is in conflict with most people, but for the trails community, as Mike pointed out, went from essentially no access on trails for bicycles to some access. So
Yes.
I really want to thank that. That's something that's been missed.
It's a positive.
Yes, it's one of the positives. I think that we are going to be forever in conflict on these lands because of their designation and because of the legal mandate for all these agencies to continuously improve. Whether or not there's data.
May I just interject there? I would prefer it not be so confrontational.
Right. But I mean, it's, look at the rooms that
Yeah.
people in here about it, because of passion people are caring about it. So I'm just pointing it out, that we are gonna be forever in conflict unless we can find a way to either adjust the designation of the land or adjust the statutes to permit the activities that are currently in use so that they can, perpetuate. And also, I think that the Friends group that we've been talking about, I think will go a long way towards bridging those conflicts and making this more of a, I think that the problem here is unobserved, unstewarded kind of access versus access done in partnership and in communication with the agency, right? So I think we can go a long way there to improve that. Another thing I wanted to say is a correction. Last meeting I referenced the Virginia State Park that allows night access, and I mentioned something about the Friends Group. The Friends Group is a nonprofit down there that organized and defined the policy, but people who researched the policy did not need to be members. That's a key point. So it was a general public access and negotiate about drinks. Something we could potentially consider here. And lastly, I wanted to make a motion, because at the last meeting, I raised, Lisa Gustafson had actually asked for this, to take the temperature of the Trails Committee and the parent committee for the change to allow bicycles on the Mid-State Trail. And I mentioned that the Trails Committee deliberated it and came up with unanimous support, but I never actually made a motion to put that in the record for the parent committee. So I just wanted to make a motion that the advisory committee supports the recommendation of the Trails Committee to share the Mid-State with bicycles in agreement with the AMC Mid-State Trail Committee as well.
So,
I'll second it.
Yes, go ahead.
the Mid-State Trail goes through the watershed, but it goes through other pieces of property.
Yeah.
So is it the AMC Appalachian Mountain Club?
Well, AMC is the steward, and I believe the, what do you call that, the right of way or the easement or whatever, the agreement that passes through AMC Mid-State Trail Committee, I believe, administers that. So I think the DCR asked their opinion as an advisory board. I don't think they made the call, but they took their temperature.
And in other parts of the state?
Yeah.
The multiple use of
Yeah,
horseback
and Leominster
riding,
State Forest,
mountain
Spencer State Forest, Douglas State Forest, where the Mid-State passes through, at least those, probably up in Ashburnham too, it's permitted.
I don't know about horseback riding now. I think it's just hike for
Right, yeah,
bike.
just, the motion is just
Yeah.
about bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it has, you expect it to be, AMC to be okay with
Oh,
mountain
I
bikes?
think they already are. Yeah, they
Okay.
took a vote. They've taken several on this.
Okay. So do I did I hear a second?
I did. Yeah.
You did. Any further discussion?
We're gonna put that caveat in there, that AMC is okay with it?
Well, we don't have to put that in the motion. That could be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to put the committee stance in the record as well.
Just to clarify, we met with AMC, it's the discretion of the landlord what uses are allowed, not AMC.
So it's not uniform from top to bottom?
Nope.
All right. Any more discussion?
Oh, should we vote on it?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Oh, sorry.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Yes, sir.
Johnny here. We no longer have Mark Blades with us any longer, but there's a gentleman with us now. We can get some radio time. A show just opened up in Worcester on the AM 830 WCRN. You can call in. Matter of fact, we want to get somebody on the board to come up on the radio and talk about this on AM radio.
Not this motion, I'm assuming.
You're talking public access plans.
John, can we do it here?
Sure.
It's John Morgan, big time hunter and fisherman. He's in our corner.
I'm the one with the big mouth, ladies. Generally, my platform, it's from 9 to 10 o'clock on Tuesdays, and it's an outdoor endeavors show, John Morgan, myself, and it encompasses all outdoor activities. And this is a hot topic. I live right against the state park, and I've seen the degradation taking place for a long time, and I'd like for you all to come on my show. And I've got an hour, and it's like this 1,000 is a 50,000 watt antenna. It goes from Boston to Springfield, Hartford, into Rhode Island. So I'm going to incorporate that, and if we can make this presence felt, I believe we can get a lot done. It's about drawing on numbers.
So you're looking for someone from the committee?
Somebody come on in the show. We'll have call-ins as well to express WCRN 8:30 a.m.
What are the hours of the show?
My show's from 9 to 10 o'clock on Tuesdays.
AM or PM?
AM. Yep. But again, it's just to make what I've known as like a sneak attack on their behalf. It's like you can't find information about these meetings.
Right.
It's hush hush.
I agree.
And again, I just got frustrated when every question your panel put towards them, they weren't prepared. And I believe that's just a ploy on their part, for them to try to just let things go under the rug. They're trying to wait us out and shut it down. I mean, all the appeal, when I moved out here 34 years ago, was that state park. It's a buffer zone. I hunt and fish, I've hunted and fished all over the world. That's home to me, and I don't want it changed. Again, there has to be some compromise to a degree to suit their needs, I get it. But not when they're trying to steamroll us, not like that. So there's gotta be some,
I don't think a person on the committee can go and represent the committee.
Yeah.
I think an individual can go and represent their views, who happen to also.
Yeah.
that's if somebody's established to,
No,
to
nobody
offer.
wants to hear my voice.
Oh, sure. they
I'm
do.
loud enough.
The committee, I don't know if they can speak as a.
No, I wouldn't be able, again, my comment earlier, that came from me.
Right.
I can't speak for the committee.
Okay.
That's part of the issue.
If you have a card, leave the card, and.
I have some,
individuals
sure.
can do it, but the committee, I don't think the committee can say, this guy's, or this gal's gonna go represent the committee on a show. But as an individual, if we wanted to go on, if you leave your card, we'll be happy to entertain that.
That'd be fine, that's what I'm looking for, because it's an individual situation anyway.
Okay.
You wouldn't have to say that I'm representing a committee.
That's right.
Just a voice of
Representing my
of
viewpoint, that's
of the
it.
towns, yeah. No, thank you for your time, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh,
Leave a card.
who's gonna, wait, who's gonna? Yeah, the card. Okay.
All right.
Can you read the motion on the table?
Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee approves mountain bikes on the Mid-State Trail. That's all, I'm a poor note taker, so. That's a-
As proposed in the.
Okay,
Well, no, this would be through the DCR land, the state land. So,
okay, I had a motion, seconded,
second.
okay, and all in favor? Aye. I thought we took a vote. All opposed? Okay.
It's like deja vu all over again.
All right, anything more from the committee? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I hope it didn't get too icy outside.